Okay, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're based. Welcome to the Enterprise Excellence Network webinar series, which we are welcomed by with Mike Hoseus and Professor Peter Hines. So today, Mike will be speaking on how to create the system of people who are willing and able to solve problems. Before we pass over to Mike, I just wanted to give you a bit of background into who we are. The Enterprise Excellence Network is a members arena for senior lean leaders based in Europe and founded by Professor Peter Hines. So the network includes quarterly benchmarking events at best practice and award-winning host sites. And these workshops are held over 2 days with topics very much driven by the members and the challenges and led by Professor Peter Hines. If you would like to find out more about this, my email will be in the follow-up to the webinar, as well as the address to our website, the enterpriseexcellencenetwork.com. So going back to the webinar with Mike today, there will be a 30-minute presentation by Mike, followed by a designated 30-minute Q&A session. So please feel free then to ask questions in the questions tab, which Peter Hines will then pass over to Mike to answer. You are able to ask questions throughout the webinar if there's something particular that you want to ask at that time, but the 30 minutes at the end is very much for that. So I will now hand over to Professor Peter Hines, who will explain a bit more about what we're doing with these webinar series at the moment, and just a little bit of background into himself as well. Thanks, Peter.
Okay, thanks very much, Emma, and welcome to everyone on the call. I recognize a few names who've been on several of our sessions before. So basically, I'm going to chair the session and the questions going for Mike in a few minutes' time. Mike and I met briefly in, we think, 2009 in Nashville. And at that point, Mike was receiving a Shingo Research and Publication Award for his book with Jeff Liker. At the same time, I was receiving an award for the Staying Lean book. So we very briefly talked. I remember him standing by one of the stalls there talking about what he'd been doing, etc. So I think Mike is seen as one of the most important knowledge holders about Toyota, and particularly the people and cultural approach that Toyota use. So over to you, Mike.
Fantastic. Thank you, Peter and Emma and the Enterprise Excellence Network, but most importantly, thanks to all of you participants who are joining and who are investing an hour of their precious time, of your precious time. So I want to make that as value added for you as possible. And I wanted to talk about today kind of that culture, what we call, at Toyota, we call that problem-solving culture. As we'll talk about, it is a problem-solving system. And so how to create that system where people are both willing and able to solve problems. It's a twofold equation there that we have to tackle. So we'll talk about both sides of that. The background of myself, you've got it there. And Peter mentioned, in 2009, I started my career with Toyota in actually 1987. The first Toyota plant in North America was in Kentucky, where I am currently, and and they wanted to make it successful, so they brought 300 to 400 trainers over. We lost count; there were so many. 300 to 400 Japanese trainers to start up our plant, and what it was to teach us to start up the plant. It was really to teach us the Toyota production system and the Toyota way. And so I was fortunate enough to be hired as a frontline supervisor or group leader, we were called. I was the 201st employee hired. The plant is now the largest Toyota plant in the world. It's of over 8,000 people. So again, we were just growing it at the time. So I had a trainer by my side for the first 2 years, teaching me that role as a supervisor. At that point, I was on the plant floor working for about 20 team members, we called them, and team leaders. I had we had good success. I had good growth. I was promoted to an assistant manager in a couple years. And then I was working for about 200 people. And again, I had an assistant manager, Japanese coach, teaching me that role in the plant. We added a second plant. That's why it's the largest plant in the world. So now we had 2 plants side by side, and I was promoted to plant manager of assembly number 1. So at that point, I was working for 1,000 people, and I had a Japanese plant manager teaching me that role. More growth, I was promoted to general manager level, where I had both assembly plants, 2,000 people, and then I had an executive coach teaching me that role. And then my last move at that plant was to human resources, because Toyota likes to develop their people, obviously, and vertically and horizontally. So I was moved to human resources, where I learned a lot about these people systems. I took them for granted. I didn't know how they got there when I was in operation. So I was really fortunate to get the behind the scenes on the system to create this culture of problem solving. And so that was my career there. And then I had good opportunity to meet Dr. Liker and to write the Toyota Culture book. And I'm very thankful and grateful to Dr. Liker, because after writing that book in about 2008, I've had opportunity to travel around the world and meet lots of companies, work with lots of different industries, organizations on this culture topic. And I love this leadership culture topic, because it goes across any and every organization, and any industry. We all have people and we all have problems, right? So we got to put those two together. So again, fortunate and thankful to have some time to talk through it with you today. And we'll talk about the first slide, is what I call the Lean Enterprise. Now, I've worked with that Lean Enterprise Institute and Jim Womack and Dr. Liker, and we all have our models and our P's and different things. These are 4 that I've latched on to. It's kind of a hybrid between, and I learned from Jim Womack and Dr. Liker that it's really important to be able to communicate this system and communicate it to others, because it is complex. But the Japanese kept it simple. And so that's what I was taught. So that's how I'll try to talk as well. But there's our Lean Enterprise. Now, again, I meet lots of enterprises that Lean is, well, I'm going to ask you, in which of those 4 P's, because I was taught we have to address all of these P's in order to create this business system, in order to create this culture. But there's one of these P's there that you see, the 4, that most organizations spend most, if not all, of their time in. And I believe Emma's got a poll question she's going to help us do, because I want to hear from you and your organization, or in your observations, which of those P's does your company spend the most time in?
Okay, so the poll has just been launched, Mike. If you would mind everyone filling out your answers.
And hopefully we can do it quickly. All right.
Okay, so we're just waiting for the last few to come in, Mike. So we have at the moment 26% purpose, 63% process, 19% people, and 19% problem solving.
All right, very good. Thank you for that. Now, I have one surprise on there from you. The one that I'm not surprised on is the majority being in the process. So that's always on my live classes and workshops and talks. Most of the hands go up on the process, because that's, of course, what we can see and measure, et cetera. And it's a production system or an operating system. But the business system, we got to expand to the other 3. Now, in my experience, that purpose one is the least amount of time spent on. And so you had the other 2, I guess, at least. So I'm glad to hear that, if that's true. Now, Now we have to you'll have to look at yourself there on kind of what you say and what you do. I remember that poll response reminds me of a discussion I had with a group of hospital leadership team, the C-suite, so to speak. And I remember the CEO saying, we spend time on this one. Everybody understands our true north, which we're going to talk about. Everybody understands our purpose. And actually his people were saying, oh, not sure, we're not sure. And I said, well, why don't we do a little poll, a little survey? And we did that with his people, and he was shocked that how strong and how much time he thought he was spending on it was not what he was told from his people. So I'm going to spend some time on that one because again, it is the biggest gap that I have seen. And so it becomes this, again, putting it back into this lean context of this true north. And that's what's at the top of the screen there. People have to understand, where are we going, right? They have to understand the why behind the journey. You've all heard lean is a journey. Hopefully you've heard this learning together. And that's a really, really key point for leadership and the culture that you're setting up. And the Japanese taught me that again, and I appreciate that, this humility, because I thought when I was getting all those promotions, I thought I had to know everything, and I quickly realized I didn't, and then I thought I had to act like I did, and I was quickly taught I don't. That when nobody knows everything, and I was taught in between that current condition and the target, there's lots of unknowns, there's lots of challenges. And boy, are we living those times right now. And I was taught that those times will be here all the time in different extents, obviously, and that we have to be able to go through them together and learn together. And that's where that Plan, Do, Check, Act comes in. So again, even there, we're mingling those P's all on this one page, because we have that purpose out there for that true north. And then we've got this process of Plan, Do, Check, Act, and using those tools, which we'll talk about, to take our people through this journey so that we're learning together. And again, to be humble enough to say, I don't know everything, let's learn together. I had one Japanese trainer say, if you can learn on this hand and teach on that hand, then you're a leader. And how quickly you can go from this hand to that hand makes you a better leader. And can we make it simultaneous? Again, takes humility. So back to that purpose. And that's this why question. And Toyota was big on this, and in all the research that I read and all the different books and things, and even start with why. It's all about, are we clear on the purpose with our people and with our customers, right? Do they know why? And do your people know why? Why are we in business? Why does continuous improvement matter? And I'm going to ask, we'll do another poll there. Maybe I can talk while you're answering the poll question so it can be more efficient. But let's do another poll question there. Emma, if you can help us.
Yep, so the poll is launched. Do your employees know the purpose of your company and the working from home? Is that the correct poll, Mike?
Yeah. So
what's in it for me? Sorry. Yeah.
That's it. The WIFM, we call it, right?
That's it. Okay. The poll's just been launched.
So many times. So again, while you're answering that, I'll talk a little bit. We've got the purpose out there for the shareholders. We've got, of course, whenever I ask the question, what's the purpose of the company in America, I most of the time I get to make money, right? And while that's a good capitalistic answer, that's not what I was taught at Toyota. Now I have to clarify myself. I've learned I have to clarify myself on that, because one workshop somebody came up and said, "You tell me Toyota didn't care about making money?" I'm like, I didn't say that. That was not what I'm trying to tell you. I'm telling you, Toyota cared a lot about making money, but that was secondary to the purpose They taught me that the money was the gas that went into the engine, or the engine that went into the car to create this purpose, to get us to the purpose. It's a vehicle. It's an end. It's a means, I'm sorry, not the end to the means. Now, what is the end? So what did they say? What did they tell? What did they say? Yes or no there?
Okay, so we have 65% yes and 39% no.
Oh gosh, well then I didn't make that a good question and a valid question. Because then I have to ask a follow-up question, which we're not set up to do. So I'm glad they know it, but now I have to ask, what is it? What is it? And is it relating to the people, to your employees? And again, that's where I can almost safely say always, not always, 95% of the time, 97% of the time, find a gap in the purpose is not addressing your employees. Purpose is usually addressing the shareholders. It's usually addressing the customers. We want to be the best company in this or that and again, I come back to what's in it for your people. And if I'm one of your employees, I can ask, how do I benefit? What if we're the number one market share of this or that, or the number one sales of this or that? What is the benefit to me? And I have you answered that question. So I should have probably clarified that before we asked that question. Is it clear of what's in it for them? And if you're doing it at the 65% clip, then my hat's off to you. Then it's not my experience, mostly in this country and others, because there's a big gap there. Because the employees are not clear on what's in it for them, and they're not clear on how and if you care about them, quite honestly. And at Toyota, it was very clear. And we talked internally, and that's why I have it up there, long-term mutual prosperity for all stakeholders. Long-term mutual prosperity for all stakeholders. So what is the win-win? And even when Toyota, took over and partnered with General Motors over here, then they had lots of discussion on what is the win-win here. And we're not going to lay off. We're going to share success. And the layoffs are, they're happening right now, right, during this crisis. And of course, Toyota has not laid off. They just had, I think they're going back to work today, actually. So I think it's been 6 or 7 weeks. No one was laid off. No one was furloughed. Everyone got 100% of their pay because of this partnership and this purpose that Toyota has created. And what else do employees want is the other question I usually ask. What do your employees want? Of course, they want that job. They want that stability. And those are the basic needs. They want safe workplace. What are those higher level needs? And are you meeting those higher level needs? And the higher level needs that I needed when I started there was growth and development. Do I have an opportunity to grow and develop? And that's where I tell people that I drank the Kool-Aid, right? That Toyota put out this partnership value equation for me that said, hey, if you're successful, we're successful. If we're successful, you're successful. And if you grow, we grow. And so I was in full force to do the best that I could, to learn and grow the best that I could. That was my mutual prosperity. And so do you have that explicitly for your people? And when I ask employees on my Gemba walks and things, I do not get a 65% answer back on that one. So that might be a similar one to the purpose percentage. So again, I don't know if you guys have to check. But a big gap in my experience with working with other organizations. We got to be really clear on this purpose. And I remember another CEO at the end of our discussion about this, he said, wow, I have a big gap. And he said, my mission statement is to satisfy my customers. And in my mind, my customers were only the external customers. He said, I don't need to change my mission statement. I need to change the definition of customer. I need to know that my customer is all of these stakeholders, the of course, the employees, of course, the customers, but also my suppliers, also my, the economy, not the economy, but the society, the environment, I was going to say. Those are all of our stakeholders. And I was taught at Twitter that those are all of my customers. And if I don't satisfy all of my customers, they would say no good. They like to say no good, Mike Son. It was either okay or no good. So fortunately or unfortunately, I heard no good, Mike Son many times because that's where I learned. And that's, they were telling me my gaps in my either thoughts or behaviors were no good. So if I had a project, if I had an A3 that everyone didn't benefit, I was told no good, Mike Son, go back and do again, right? Try again. So are you working to everybody's benefit? That's a challenge. This whole partnership is a challenge. So again, we talked about the stable employment, and Toyota said, hey, that's the most foundational, basic builder of trust is this stable employment. And again, if put it into context, remember we talked about how are we going to make a culture where people are willing to solve problems? You have to have the buy-in. You have to have the partnership. You have to have the trust. And they have to understand their purpose in order for them to care, in order for them to be willing to improve for you. Then the stable employment, again, is a really basic one. And the what's in it for me? I usually ask people when I'm alive, and I ask, what is the definition of lean in your organization? And most of them are on that process triangle that we looked at. When I ask the definition of lean, very rarely do I get any of those other P's. I hardly ever get anything on the purpose one when I ask their definition of lean. Sometimes I'll get people, most all the times I'm getting the process, right? And it needs to be all of them together. It needs to be all of them together. And the worst case is, I asked my brother works for a Cincinnati company. I won't tell you which one. It's a global company. He had his lean. He's on the floor, and he came back and told me at a holiday. Well, everybody on the floor jokes and says lean is LEAN. Less employees are needed. That's what he talks. Now that's terrible. It's a terrible lean joke, I usually say, because people laugh at that when I tell them that. But that is not our definition of lean. I hope it's not yours. And I hope it's not your people's. And that's where, again, building this trust and then this stable employment. Because if we try to get our people willing to solve problems, we try to get our people willing to engage in improvement, and they're fearing for their job, whether it's due to the economy or whether it's due to their, worst case, due to their improvement, then we don't have a lean culture on our hands. So we have to build that trust and that partnership as part of that willing part of the equation. Then they'll start contributing, right? Then we got to get to the next part where we'll teach them how to best contribute. So again, it's this willing and able, and building that trust and that partnership is part of the willing part. Same thing for the values, again. And I think even when we look at the two pillars there, I was taught this, we have to balance that, the business side or the CI side, the competency side, and then the respect side. Again, the no layoffs, again, the getting everyone to contribute, growing, developing our people is all that respect side. And so do you have both pillars? We could do another poll. We don't have that set up, but I usually ask in a live sense, which of those pillars is usually missing in our organizations? And most times we get the respect for people one missing. And the reason Toyota shows that on the pillars is that if one without the other doesn't work, you can have a really strong CI system, but if our respect for people is not there, it won't work. Just like if people improve themselves out of a job, we won't have that culture of improvement, obviously sustaining. It'll be very short-lived. So how do you respect your people? Again, I usually go through an exercise on that, talking and what are the behaviors that you can demonstrate respect, that no layoffs is, listening to our people, getting their input, developing our people. One important one I will tell a quick story on. I learned at Toyota, they sent us to Japan to work on the line. We were supervisors, remember, and they said, you won't be, I'm getting a little webcam close here. I don't know why. All right, I got a little message there, sorry. So they put us on the line for 30 days as supervisors saying, hey, we want you to understand how hard it is, right, to work on the assembly line, switching to 4 different jobs, a car every minute. We want you to have respect for your people. Well, as I'm going through that 30 days, I was working hard on my standard work, and I scratched one of the Camrys, one of the automobiles. But nobody saw me do it. So I was going to let it go. And I literally was doing the rest of my job, and then my conscience started getting me, and I thought, oh, I better pull, and I thought, no. Right before the car left my area, I pulled the end on as we were taught, and the team leader came over, and he tagged that scratch. And then he stayed with me for a couple cars, and he taught me how to not scratch that car again. So I thought we were all okay. And then we have team meeting huddles, right, for problem solving and improvement. And they start speaking Japanese about Mike's son, and I'm wondering, what are they talking about? Then they say scratchy. And then I'm getting upset at that team leader for telling everybody that I screwed up. And then with that, they call everybody back to the line, and then they're starting to run by. They're walking past me, shaking my hand and patting me on the back. I'm thinking they're telling me goodbye. And I get a translator over, and she tells me, no, they're not telling you goodbye. They're telling you thank you. Thank you for letting them know there was a problem. Thank you for letting them know you made the problem. And wow, was that not a freeing experience? So what do you think I did the next time I had a problem? Did I hide it? Did I cover it up? No, I let everybody know. And so do you want that culture in your organization where people are free to mess up, free to make a mistake, free to let you know about a problem? The answer is yes. I was taught by the Japanese. They said, if you don't know you have a problem, you have no luck in solving it, right? So yes, you want to know about that problem. And then your next question is, do you have that culture where people are safe? So really important, this upfront work on this true north, this why, this how, and then we can get into the what, right? And then the tools, and then the things which we're transitioning into now. But people shortcut those first ones with the purpose part, the culture part, the people part, right? So don't shortcut it at home. And then again, we were taught this servant leadership value. Again, as a leader, I'm working for my people. They don't work for me. I work for them. That's completely 180, at least what I was taught when I was growing up. I wanted to be boss and have people working for me. And I was taught at Toyota, no, it's the other way around. The more promotions you get, the more people you're working for. Again, do we have that attitude? Do we have that culture in your organization? Now we can put it into the tools. So again, this willing to solve problems, this purpose and partnership is really, really important. Because if we jump into the tools and we don't know why, then we're not going to have that engagement. And so we can take the KPIs, we can take that safety, quality, productivity, cost, and human resources now, and we can link that to our true north. We can have true north metrics, and that's respectful, I was taught, so that everybody knows where we're going, why we're going, how we're going to get there, and let's keep score while we're going, right, to see if we're to track our improvement. And so you got to have that balanced scorecard out there. Most organizations have it. Not all of them have it down to the team member level. And most do not have the people or the HR or the human resource development column over there. So again, I would challenge you on that for your people. And that's a whole nother subject on, how we're measuring that measuring our culture and our people development and our people engagement, right? So that should be part of the scoreboard. And now we can teach the people the tools, right? And we can teach them 5S. We can teach them standard work. And I got another poll question on standard work because I see in my Gemba walks a whole lot of confusion on standard work, right? And standard work is not a work instruction sheet or an engineering instruction sheet or a technical instruction sheet, and it's not a training sheet. And so I have to teach people the difference between I like all three of those documents: a technical instruction sheet, engineering instruction sheet, a standard worksheet, and a training sheet. So I believe we got another poll question, Emma. We can pull up here quickly for you.
Okay, so that's just been launched. What is the purpose of operator standard work?
We have a multiple choice, don't we?
Yes, so repeatability, quality, training, none of the above or all of the above.
All right, this is going to be a good one. I'm looking forward to this one. And did we lose the camera, Emma?
We have. See if
There
I can
we
get
go.
you back on there.
Came back. Okay. All right, how are we looking on the?
Okay, so we're just waiting for a couple more votes.
All right.
Okay, so we have 38% repeatability, 25% quality, 16% training, 3% none of the above, and 56% all of the above.
All right, this is a great one. Because the correct answer is D, none of the above. It was a trick question, all right? But it's an important trick. I asked the purpose of standard work, right? Not the benefits, not the advantages, which you all gave me, right? The right answer for. If I'd asked you what are the advantages or the benefits, then it's repeatability, quality, training, and all the above, right? But we miss the purpose, and your people miss the purpose. And so that was the purpose of the trick question, right? So I'll ask you again, what is the purpose of standard work? And I can enlarge that to say, what is the purpose of all the lean tools? Whether it's standard work, whether it's 5S, whether it's a scoreboard, visual control. And that's why I got the slide up there. I gave you the answer on the slide up there. Right, so up top there is what I was taught is the purpose of all the lean tools. I was taught with a little garbage can and a square around it, right? My trainer teaching me the difference between a missing garbage can and no garbage can is there. And the same thing with standard work. It's to make problems and opportunities visible. So the purpose of standard work is to make a problem and opportunity for improvement visible. The purpose of standard work is improvement. That is so key. Yes, we're going to do training. Yes, we're going to get repeatability, quality. Those are benefits. The purpose is improvement, and specifically for your operator, improvement. That's why I put operator standard work on here. Are your operators using standard work for improvement? Again, they can use a technical instruction sheet for quality. They can use the engineering instruction sheet for efficiency. Are they using it for improvement, their improvement? So our operators should be the authors of those standard work. And of course, the drivers of the improvement of the standard work. So again, we got our willing operators now, right, ready to make improvement. And we had operators driving standard, which still do. When I was there, I observed operators driving improvement in standard work, reducing the cycle time That's another one on my Gemba walk. I just look for time. Look for, that's one of the 3 components of standard operator standard work. And when people hand me an engineering instruction sheet or a training sheet, it doesn't have time on it. So I know they're not using it for improvement. They're using it for quality or for training. So we have to give the operators the vehicle. So first we give them the incentive and the willingness to make improvement. Then we have to give them the vehicle to make improvement, of which operator standard work is the most foundational, basic vehicle to do so. So I can talk a lot more on that, but I hope I got the point across. Necessary for problem solving and improvement is our standard work. Because the Japanese, and again on that sheet there, we can go micro on the operator standard work, and we can go macro on PDCA thinking. And you see the PDCA thinking there. All the tools are meant to help with this PDCA thinking. That was the no garbage can versus a missing garbage can. It's only missing if I have a standard there, if I have the square that it should be in. If there's no square there, I just have no garbage can. There was one there yesterday, but it's not there today. If there's a square there that says garbage can and it's not there, now I have a problem. And I have a problem because I have a standard. So we were taught, again, with whether it's standard work or 5S, we need 3 things to have a problem. We need a standard, a current situation that doesn't match it, subsequent gap. Now we have our problem. So are you teaching your people problem solving PDCA with your lean tools? So we were taught, again, when we do our Gemba walks, whatever, we're taught to ask 4 PDCA questions, because that's the culture we're setting up. First one being, what's the standard? Now, I learned when I asked that question, over 50% of the time, including at Toyota and more at other organizations, and you try to ask it when you get back or today, what's our standard? And the answer I got was, I don't know. Do we have one? We do it like this, they do it like that. And of course, my trainer would say, no standard means no problem. So we have to clarify the standard. Now we can check the current situation, get our gap. Now we have a problem. We got 3. Now the 4th and hardest one, what are we doing to close the gap? And that's where we can get the engagement of all of our people. That's where we need the engagement of all of our people. Again, my job at Toyota was to get 8,000 people engaged in problem solving. That was my problem to solve. So that's the way the culture works. But again, we have to have the willingness, and then we can use these tools to start building the capability of problem solving. And we can start what we call our human value stream, our people value stream. So we took this people value stream as seriously in, again, a parallel track, just like those 2 pillars. We got our product or service value stream, and we got our people value stream. So how we bring it, how are we attracting the best people? How are we selecting the best people based on these competencies of problem solving and teamwork? And then how are we onboarding them, engaging them, developing them? Continual cycle. So that is a big gap in a lot of organizations. I know all of you are probably hiring people, promoting people, but do you have a system to do so? And are you measuring that system, and are you improving that system that you're getting the best people? We were taught, again, I'm not building a culture, but I'm building quality people. Taught as a leader, we're building people. I got to get wrapped up here. I know I'm going over on time, and I want to leave time for Q&A. And so let's wrap it up quick. But again, these key points, and there's another one, the same thing with this work of leaders. It's the same idea that I'm building the system that are, again, that's setting up these standards, and I'm trying to build the people who are building the systems, right? That understand how to set up Plan, Do, Check, Act. I tell people Plan, Do, Check, Act is not seen. I don't see it when I go to Gembas. So you'll have to look at your Gemba. I don't see it at the Gembas I go to. And we want it at all 3 levels. So our job, again, my job is to set up where I got 8,000 people thinking in a Plan, Do, Check, Act way, setting up standards, identifying the gaps, and working to close the gaps. It sounds simple, and I realize it's not easy. But again, we have to set it up simply to have any chance to make it happen. So our last poll question, and we'll get to your questions. We want a culture where everybody's problem solving, that everybody's doing plan, do, check, act. And again, when I go to organizations and I do my Gemba walks and I do my assessments, I find gaps. And so we set up, our systems to look at, again, the floor level, right? The operators, the supervisors, and then we should look at kind of the maybe manager engineering level, and then our executive level. Looking at those three levels. And then we would look at where's the gap. And we got, again, plan, do, check, act on that picture shows that everybody's doing plan, do, check, act, but I'm using different tools at different levels. I'm doing daily problem solving, right? If I'm a supervisor or a team leader or a team member, I'm doing system problem solving if I'm a manager or an engineer. I'm doing strategic problem solving if I'm an executive. And of course, there'll be some blur of those layers and levels, but that's the focus of each. So our last one, quick, where's your gap on problem solving? You want problem solving going at all those levels. Do you have a gap?
So the poll's just been launched. If you could please select operator level, supervisor, manager, engineer, executive, or all of the above. Thank you. Okay, just the last one's coming in now, Mike.
Okay.
So we have 23% operator level, 19% supervisor, 19% manager or engineer, 32% executive, and 42% all of the above.
All right. Thank you for that. And there was no tricks in that one, so like the standard work one. And interesting, although I think representative of what I observe and people I talk to over here as well, because I think that middle level, that's our lowest gap. Because I think people understand that we should be solving problems at a supervisor kind of manager, engineer level. Now we can always improve in that capability of those, but it's usually on the two ends, the operator and the executive. You guys had a big one. The biggest one you had was on the executive and all. And again, the all I think is honest and valid. And executive is valid in my experience. Those folks a lot of times are doing the leading and doing kind of the rapid fire problem solving, but not necessarily the plan, do, check, act, and certainly not the strategic problem solving. What usually I see is people working a level down, that we don't have daily problem solving going on at the operator lead level. So we've got managers coming down into that daily problem solving. Then we don't have the system level problem solving going. So now we got executives coming down into the system problem solving, and no one's left to do the strategic. So I appreciate your executive gap there. And then the gap is again one that we can work on to improve. And again, hopefully we'll improve upon both the willing part and the able part. Couple quick last key points. Got 2 more slides left. This one is just kind of the phases of problem solving and trying to make the point that it's a continual process. That as soon as we solve a problem, we close the gap. Now we got to maintain that gap, like it says. But then when we can demonstrate our stability, then we're going to go at it again, right? And we're going to actually create a gap. We're taught to create a gap. So when I got my scoreboards going, I got my improvement going with my team. I hit the goal, stabilize, and then change the goal, right? Move it up again, move it up again, move it up again, or down again to 0, whatever the case may be. Just a quick story. I had 2 years as a supervisor, and again, had my coach by my side from Japan, and we're working all these improvements and suggestions and problem solving, and our scoreboard kept getting better and better and better. And after 2 years, I can tell you all 5 of my scoreboards, safety, quality, productivity, cost, and human resources, were green and stable green. Now, it didn't take too long, a week or two, with the head Japanese trainer in the plant came down to my line, and I'm a supervisor. And he says to me, "Mike, son, I see your line is running well." So I'm thinking, finally, some okay, good job. And very quickly he says, "Now what, Mike, son?" And I'm thinking, what do you mean, now what? Now I'm resting is now what? And I didn't say that out loud, of course, but he took me over to the break area and he showed me a stair step down of continuous improvement. He said, "Mike, son, you've had good improvement. Now you're at 0. Now what?" And I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to sustain it. And he said, "No, deeper." I'm like, "I'm going to share it with others." That's great, but what here? And long story short, he had much more coaching and training and questions for me, but he taught me it was time for me to teach my people how to eliminate waste more effectively and to reduce a process. We used to call it eliminate a process, not eliminate a person, right? Because we're not going to lay anybody off, but to go from 20 processes to 19. Now that was a whole nother set of a Yamazumi or a line balance chart. So we had a lot of learning to do there. But his philosophy there was what? Because of course, when I changed 19 jobs and we reduced a process, and we had some chaos, we had some turmoil, that we went back into the green, yellow, and then back up into red on some of those. So now I had problems again. Because when I had no problems, my trainer, that head guy, said to me, "Mike, son, no problem is big problem. What will you do?" So I learned if I couldn't change the goal, I had to change the current situation to make problems again. And he says to me, "Mike, son, your job is to develop an art." He literally held up his bicep. That your job is to make an army of problem solvers, make a strong army. So I hope I'm wrapping up. I hope I've made the point that your job is to make an army of strong problem solvers and to develop your army, right, of generals and captains, whatever, that are going to be making their armies. And that involves both willing and able. So I'm wrapping up. Mr. Cho was our first president. Peter said when he came over and worked with Toyota and as a state, Mr. Cho was our president. He was a great, great leader. When he left our plant, he became global president and then global chairman of the board for Toyota. So I just wanted to leave you with his 3 thoughts on lean leadership, so to speak. Go and see, again, getting out, getting to the Gemba, asking why, right? This problem-solving attitude, and showing respect. And we were taught, and I had videos on him I used to show, we will show respect by developing our people. So he used to say, how much time are you taking away from your day to invest in your people, to develop your people? And that still sticks with me. People remember you on how much time you invest in them. And that's the developing the people and respect part. So that's my role. I went over. I'm sorry, Emma, but we got some time left here for some of your questions.
Thank you very much for that, Mike. And everyone's very enthusiastic and goes over a bit, so that's fine. We have a few questions already starting to come in. Let me just grab the sheet here. So the first one is from Lars, who asks, "Our financial view often looks at employees as expenses. Most managers at my company talk about people as full-time employees, full-time equivalent, effectively reducing us to expense numbers and not a valuable resource that we grow rather than try to reduce. Any advice how to engage in discussions to change this view?"
Gosh, yes. That again, that's my passion and my mission, so to speak, is to help you with that problem, because it drives me crazy. It's just such a short-term view, right? And it's kind of, it's almost safe to say, the American view type of thing on things. So I run into that all the time. So I remember I was at a lunch with a chief nursing officer in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and that nursing officer tells me, she said, that's where I learned FTE, so that brought back that memory. She said, "My CEO and my CFO tells me that I have to reduce my FTEs. That's my job, and improvement is to reduce my FTEs. And I'm like, and that's when I learned it's a full-time equivalent in reducing people. She said that's the only way that I was told that I can demonstrate the reduction of cost, an improvement. That if I'm doing this CI stuff, that's the only way it gets the bottom line. And I said, oh goodness. So, and a side story, I went and visited her hospital, and I would not want to be a patient in that hospital under that CEO because they cut it to the bone. And people were running around, chickens with their heads cut off. So the quality, so what suffers then? Quality, safety, etc. So we have to teach our leaders, and we have to turn it the other way. What other ways are there to improve cost? Now, we're all accountable for that. We all have to improve our business, right? And we have to get results for our leaders. Our leaders want results. They need them. So my answer to you is we have to demonstrate and we have to teach, right? So we have to demonstrate that we can reduce costs in more ways than cutting heads or reducing FTEs. And usually I go through what's all those ways. I'll do it quicker now, right? So safety, right? If we improve our injury rate, is that cutting costs? And we demonstrated that to the millions of dollars at Toyota Kentucky that we saved in reducing injuries. And obviously been showing respect for our people. Can we save cost with quality, cost of quality, right, and scrap, et cetera? So the point is we can obviously efficiency, and then can we engage our people in cost improvement? Can we engage them in, how about attrition, turnover? What's turnover costing you? So we have to educate our people. People don't understand. And even before this COVID, right, I was meeting people with turnover rates of 20, 30, 40, 50%, and their leaders having no idea what that's costing them. And so we have to educate our leaders on the opportunity costs in all those ones, the real cost in some of those, and now we have to start demonstrating. So we got to do a pilot area, a pilot plant, and start demonstrating the process that will get us sustained cost improvement without cutting heads. If I was expected to take a 5 or 10% reduction. Remember, a reduction of processes. And if I had a 5% goal for the year, then I would shoot for 10%. So then I could take attrition for the other 5%, and then I could hold on to 5%, and I could take those extra people and I could invest in more improvements. I could put a safety team together, a quality team together, and do really good Kaizen events and different things to even get more cost savings. So it's investing in the process, investing in the cost savings that will sustain, not in the cutting of heads. Sorry for the long answer, but hopefully it gives you some insight, because that's a really, really good question and a really challenging one.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. We got quite a few other questions. There's one here from Anthony. Excuse me. He sounds like a bit of an academic. He says he uses the purpose process people in his organization as well, but do you know where the origin of that comes from, or who first came up with that?
Well, like I said, everybody's got their P's, and so I give credit to, Liker had 4 or 5 P's, and I don't remember them offhand. Same kind of idea. And Jim Womack, when I'm an instructor with Lean Enterprise Institute, and he had the 3 there: the purpose and the process and the people. And then I added in that plan, do, check, act, problem solving, because that's all I was taught and learned when I was at Toyota. So then I put that in there as well. So anyway, I think it's some hybrid, but again, it goes to me that says, hey, we're trying to teach people this and the model. And that's why Toyota has the Toyota production house and the Toyota production, the Toyota way house and all that. It's to how to picture it, to teach it, and to explain it to our folks. So that was what I was taught on the model. So I don't think the P's are as important as what's your standard, really, right? And what's the standard for your organization, and how do you teach it to your people? And then more importantly, how do you use it for plan, do, check, act? Because like we said, on whether it's the TPS house or the Toyota way, it was setting the standard. And even if I can't go back now with that Toyota way house, but it says right on the slide, this is our standard. This isn't the current, and there's usually confusion on that in organizations, because when I've seen people throw out these models and the people say, well, you're a bunch of hypocrites. You're not following that. And Toyota puts out the Toyota Way, says, we're not following this. This is our standard. And we're setting the standard in order to identify the gap in order to drive the improvement. So that's the purpose of the model, to drive the Plan, Do, Check Act. So focus on that more than the minutia. Sure.
I think my answer to that one, the first time I heard someone explicitly talking about the 3 Ps was Jim Womack, probably in the early 2000s. But whether he was the originator, who knows? But anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a question here from my friend Costas, and he says, working at Toyota, I felt exactly the same. Working outside of Toyota for 10 years, I feel it's always 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I feel without coaches or coordinators at all levels, it is very, very difficult to develop an army problem solver. What is your experience outside Toyota? How can we create a culture of excellence?
Yeah, I agree with that problem. It's a big challenge. And it really, I've learned without leadership on board, you're not going to go too far. So, but that, again, back to I think the first question is, I realize we don't always start with we can't always start with leadership. So then I'm back to the demonstrate, right, and educate model. But without the leadership on board, it's never going to happen. So I always say we've got to get the leadership on board to get that culture of excellence, however you worded it there. And if we can get that leadership on board, and can demonstrate this, that we can build a process that will get the results. It's what everybody wants, and that the results that will last. And so I would say go after your leadership team is the only way to do it, because without the leaders, we're going to run back to the firefighting. We're going to run back to the monthly and the quarterly, going after the profits, whatever it takes, and the system will just be destroyed. So it's a long-term investment. So we have to educate and demonstrate would be my answer again to that.
I think that comes into often people see lean to be, we hire a few lean coaches and we've done our job as leaders, and it's not really anything to do with us after that. And that seems to be the problem.
Yeah, great point. Well, that's a good point. I'm going to piggyback to that one. I appreciate that, Peter, because it brings us back to that question that, what is our role? And people have the misnomer, when I talk about all those coaches, and we were very, very fortunate to have those coaches, so don't get me wrong, but those coaches all left, right? Because their job was to coach the coach, right? And so who's the coach now? Well, the coaches now are the team leaders, group leaders, managers, etc., right? So it's built so that who's coaching the coach? So I would go back to the original question and say, yes, we need coaches, but you need to set up the roles to where everybody's a coach, right? So all the leaders are coaches, and that's back to that people system. So we're promoting people not on their ability to do, but on their ability to coach. That's a big difference. Big difference. And then you still have to look at, now, how do we coach the coach? So whether you're looking at your, organizational development group, or your operational excellence, or your lean group, now you can focus on coaching the coaches. But it's the army then of coaches, not the lean team who ends up becoming the doers as well. So focus on that coaching of the problem solving.
Okay, so I guess in this sort of general comment, general area, there's a point from Alan here. Problem root cause elimination is not so strong in most companies. Why? What are the root causes of such behavior and thinking?
Yeah. Well, I mentioned the firefighting. So the firefighting is the biggest I guess manifestation. Now you challenge me with what's the root cause of that, and I'm going to go back, I guess, to leadership. If leadership is doing whack-a-mole, and then the rest of the organization is going to be doing whack-a-mole, and then jumping that one, jumping over that one, jumping over that one, and that brings back a quick story. And I know I think we're getting close to time here, but so I had an engine lifter go down in my assembly plant one time. Now I got a lot of equipment for doors, for windows, and everything else, but I had a big lifter that put the engine in. And when that engine lifter went down, my whole plant went down. So I got a radio call one day, the engine lifter's down. And I used to work at Toys R Us, I tell people usually in my introduction. So I don't know anything about engine lifters, I can guarantee you. So I go down, and thank goodness the engineers are there, and skilled maintenance people are there, and the operators. And sure enough, 10 minutes later, they get the engine lifter back up and running. So I say, good job, guys. And I hand them a little free Coke coupon or something. And my trainer says, no good, Mike. Son. And I'm like, why not? They did a good job. No, you no good, Mike. What is your job, Mike, son? Mike, son, ask why. Right? Get the root cause. And so it's this culture. Again, I don't know if it's just we're born with it or whatever. It's like, get it back up and running, fix it, and we're back up. And of course, we have to teach our people there's a big difference between fixing a problem and solving a problem. So now he says, Mike, son, get the root cause. And so I get them a whiteboard, I start through, and I tell you, I get an interruption on my radio. I got another breakdown. So I tell my trainer, I got to go to the other one. Get that one fixed. I didn't say that, but he says, no, you stay. I said, no, I'm going. He said, no, you stay. He said, Mike, son, stay. He said, solve one problem today. And he made me stay there and get to root cause. Mm-hmm. And it's that discipline. Again, you know, the culture and the thing is we're running all around. And in my reflection, I had plenty of problems. I could run around all day long, right? I could fix problem after problem after problem and never get the root cause on any of them. So you have to set up in your organization that discipline and that accountability. And that's where Toyota uses the daily management system, the scoreboards, the huddles, and all that to identify. When the leaders went on the Gemba walk, and whether I'm a giver or a receiver, I'm going to be asking, what problem are you working on today? Everybody knew that. It knew we got lots of problems we're fixing. What's the one you're solving? And identify that on your board and start working towards it, and with your team, etc. So I will leave you with that. Solve one problem today and teach your people to do the same, and set up the systems that hold us accountable to do so.
Look, we're almost out of time, but I think we'll just take one last question if that's okay. So there's a question from Stephen saying, what percentage of a person's time being developed is a good indicator of respect for people?
Oh, goodness. That's a good question. I'm thinking back to the slide that we had at Toyota on, you know, what amount of time should we be at the Gemba even, right? And doing the problem solving and doing the coaching and teaching. And it was a little bit different at all the levels. And so obviously, you know, our team members and team leaders were there 100% of the time. We made a standard where our supervisors need to be on the floor 100% of the time. No meetings, no this, that they can do that before shift, lunch, after shift. They need to be there solving problems, teaching their people, right? So, and then a system manager, now that was 50%. So 50% I can be in meetings doing whatever, and then the other 50% I need to be out at the Gemba. As an executive, 25%, a little higher, 10%. So we tried to put time to that. Again, and we measured and we did plan, do, check, act so that we would be out there doing that. It's a little bit different question on, you know, what percentage of training classes and that type of thing. But the Japanese weren't big on training classes. Now, don't get me wrong, we went to training classes, but they were big on OJD, on the job development. So they would send us to a training class, but then the training class was then the assignment, now go and do. And go and do it on the floor and start your real development, right? You're learning by doing. And so that's where then it links back into this Gemba time and this problem solving time and this coaching time. So I think if you start there, you'll be in good shape. And again, you set up the standards and you set up the visibility so that we can all hold each other accountable, because we know those will all be hacked away and whacked away with problems and emergencies. So we got to go back to, you know, we're looking for the long term, and we're investing in our culture, we're investing in our people, and we're investing in ourselves.
Okay, thanks for that, Matt. Just one experience I had when I was doing some research in Japan with Toyota back 25 years ago. I remember one of the things that I was looking at is how do people get trained? And what I found was there were actually less training hours in the Toyota supply chain Japan than there was in the automotive industry in Europe. And I sort of thought, hallelujah, I found the weakness of Toyota. They don't do enough training. And I thought, well, they got all these results, but they didn't do this training. And one of the other questions is, I said, what's the split of on the job and off the job training? And I found in Europe, it was typically 90% off the job, 10% on the job. And in Japan, it was the other way around. So it wasn't actually the amount of time, it's what the training was, where was it, and how impactful, rather than a percentage of time.
That's right. I love that. That's an accurate percentage. It was 90% on the job. As the day happens,
Sure.
Every problem happens. Every problem is an opportunity to coach and teach, is what I was taught.
Sure. Okay, good. Well, thank you very much for that, Mike. We're just going to ask Emma to close us out for the session, and there's a little feedback we'd like you to do. But on behalf of all the delegates, I'd like to thank you, Mike. Very interesting, and I'm glad we got the scratchy story in that you're very famous for it as well. So over to you, Emma.
Okay, yes, thank you very much, Mike. Really interesting stuff and some great questions as well. Thank you everyone for participating, and nice to see some familiar names there as well. So thank you for continuing to support the webinar series. I will send, there'll be a follow-up email with more details on how to register for future webinars, which we're running approximately every couple of weeks with different guest speakers, and as well the link to the website to find out more about the network, and feel free to email myself directly too. So I've just launched a quick poll for the rating of the webinar. If you are able to fill that out, that would be great for some feedback. And we look forward to hopefully connecting with you all again. Thank you.
Thank you all.